This next sequence is one of those all-in-one that gets a lot of joints that impact shoulder mobility, and it's just a wonderful sequence. You will need a pillow or a folded up towel or something for your head, as well as perhaps a 1 pound weight or a bottle of water or a can of soup. If you are very restricted, please don't use a weight to begin with. But I'm going to have Jessie pick up that 1 pound weight. And first she's just going to hold her arm straight out toward me, and in this position she's going to rotate from the shoulder joint into external rotation and internal. And so keep going back and forth, there's no holds, and I'm going to have her do it 3 times in this position, really kind of being mindful for sure, but go ahead and feel free to wind the joint into internal and external. After you've done 3, bring your hand down toward your hip and do the exact same thing, internal and external. And she's really moving at the shoulder joint, kind of cranking the joint a little bit. Don't hurt yourselves, but wind it. And then she's going to bring her arm overhead and do the exact same thing. So she's going to go external and internal and external and internal, really trying to move from the shoulder joint rather than the elbow. The elbow will move into pronation and supination, but really we want the shoulder joint. Now bring your hand back down toward your hip. So there's a lot of pieces to this particular sequence. So the next part is called windmill, and on this one I'd like to isolate the motion to the shoulder joint. So I'm going to ask her to keep her ribs still and her pelvis as still points. She's going to rotate her shoulder into external rotation. She's going to bring her arm in front of her, doing an arc, and as it passes overhead, she's going to rotate into internal rotation. Keep going. Beautiful. As it passes her hip, she's going to rotate into external rotation. As it passes overhead, internal. Back down to her hip, it goes into external. As it passes overhead, it goes into internal. And I'm going to ask her to stop when she gets to her hip. Now, she's going to stay in internal rotation. We're going to continue to rotate forward. Internal as she brings it forward. She's going to rotate into external as it passes overhead. Internal as it passes her hip. External as it passes overhead. Internal as it passes her hip. And external as it passes overhead, and I'm going to ask her to stop when she gets to her hip. Stay in external rotation. She's going to go back. As it passes overhead, she's going to rotate into internal rotation as it passes her hip. External. As it passes her head, internal rotation. External. Beautiful. Internal. And stop there. She's going to keep rotating back. So now in internal rotation, go back, rotate to external. As she passes her hip, she's going to go to internal rotation. As she passes her head, external. And then internal one last time. And external, she's going to stop at her hip. We're going on to the next part of this little sequence. So now we're going to work on thoracic mobility into rotation, and it turns out that your thoracic mobility is directly linked to shoulder mobility. If you can't move your thoracic spine or the spine around your rib cage area of your body, then you will be restricted in your shoulder joints. Those are coupled motions. So I'm going to ask her to bring her arm out in front of her. She's going to bring the arm up overhead and follow her hand with her gaze. No, sorry. We're doing up to thoracic mobility, so hand up to the ceiling. Beautiful. She's going to stop here. Now, her pelvis is the still point on this one. So very slowly, she's going to allow her arm to lower out to the side. Her head is going to follow her hand, and it's the weight of her head and the weight of her arm that rotate the ribs. Then she's going to bring her ribs back around, bringing the arm back up to the ceiling, following it with her gaze, and she's going to lower back to the starting position. Beautiful. Let's do that again. So hand up to the ceiling, follow with your gaze. Stop there for a moment and really say to yourself, Okay, pelvis is the still point, and I'm not going to move my ribs. They are going to follow the weight of the arm and the head. I'm going to open the arm out. I'm going to follow with my gaze, really follow with your head, and it's the weight of the arm and the head that move the ribs and the thoracic spine. Then she brings her top ribs forward again, and then back to the starting position. We'll do that one last time. Hand up to the ceiling, follow with your gaze. Stop there. Tell yourself, pelvis is not going to move, and your ribs are going to be passive. They're going to move because of the weight of your arm and the weight of your head. And then you're going to bring your head and arm back up by using your ribs. This time you're going to pull with the ribs to get the arm back up, and then the arm back to the starting position. And we're going to put it all together. So now we're going to do a circle with the top arm, and this time pelvis is the still point. She's going to allow the ribs and the head to move. So she does the circle, and as her arm passes overhead, she's going to open out, and she's going to do a full circle all the way around, trying not to bend that elbow and trying to keep her hand as heavy and low to the ground. So Jessie is very unrestricted in this area. So don't be surprised if your hand is not quite as close to the ground as hers is. And let's just do one last circle because this one feels so good. All the way around. Beautiful. Thank you.